Let's get Hemmings on this one.
I've been in my fair share of fights in my day. Can't say I've had to be in any as of recent, because if I get into a shootout or a street fight, that means something went wrong. Violence is usually my last resort. Looks like the boss has handed me my first official case. How to craft a transcendent fight scene. Sounds simple enough. Getting to the bottom of this shouldn't take me too long. This is Detective Hemmingz, codename Paperwork, the literary detective, and welcome to Case 1. What makes a fight scene truly elite? Every medium has action portions where one person must engage in combat with another. Whether you're reading a comic book, playing a game, or perhaps you're watching a film, lots of narratives have action sequences in them. Sometimes in discussions, you'll hear people talk about how this was an awful fight, or this was a transcendent fight, or that perhaps this show doesn't have particularly good fights from top to bottom, and then I began to wonder to myself, what actually makes a fight scene good? So, like I just said, in media, there will come a point where a character fights another character. However, one character might fight multiple foes. You might have squad battles or team battles, if you will. Does the number of combatants dictate whether or not a fight is good? Is it the weaponry that was used? Perhaps it's the cinematography or how well it's choreographed. Paneling is the most important thing, the speed, fluidity, and animation. Or is the most important thing the build up and reasoning behind the fight itself? Let's talk. Please like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can stay notified. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of this discussion. I have always felt just a little bit excluded when it comes to fight scenes in general. By which I mean this. A lot of fights that the people I hang around or interact with seem to like different fights than I do, or at the very least, they like the same fight for different reasons, which is interesting. It seems a lot of my peers enjoy action that has high speed and massive destruction. And don't get me wrong, I love your galaxy chucking slugfest as much as the next guy or gal, but I've always saw fights as two separate things from this standpoint. Firstly, the build-up, history, stakes, and circumstances of the fight itself. And then secondly, separate to those things that I just mentioned, would be the actual fight itself. So simply put, I'm talking about the reason behind the battle and the actual battle when it plays out. The reason why the characters are fighting each other is extremely important. If you show me a fight scene from a movie I don't watch, I think it's cool. But since I have no attachment to the characters or have any context, it's not going to excite me. Superman vs. Zod to me is a great fight contextually because Superman has to stop Zod or it's the end of humanity. He has a reason to fight this person he doesn't know all too well to protect his home, the people in it, even though Zod is one of the last Kryptonians alongside himself, and his father wanted him to be the bridge between two people. The history and interpersonal relationships behind the characters that are engaging in battle is also really important. When two really good friends fight, what is the reason? Perhaps a difference in ideals? Did the two characters that were once close start to disconnect somewhere and then clashed with one another? For example, Naruto versus Sasuke happened because Sasuke needed to go down a dark path in order to obtain power, to avenge his clan and kill his brother. Naruto, having been a talentless ninja, had caught up and even temporarily surpassed Sasuke, a respected prodigy, though we have to note that Naruto does come from an oppressive lineage and does have the nine-tailed fox as well. But that being said, they came to blows. This would eventually lead Naruto and Sasuke to fight to the death 2 times in Final Valley. Another really good example of this is Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan was Anakin's master, brother, and even a father figure. They had been through many dangerous missions and got out of them together, saving one another, relying on one another, growing and learning together. But Anakin was power hungry, in love when it was forbidden, and afraid to lose the people he cared about again by being too weak, which would eventually lead them down different paths, with Anakin being tempted by the dark side, which leads to their epic fight in Revenge of the Sith. How about the stakes of a fight? What it means for either party to win or lose? What makes Rob Lucci versus Monkey D. Luffy one of the most compelling fights I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing is what is at stake if Luffy loses. After declaring war against the world government, traveling through a natural disaster, being ostracized by an entire island, and then getting Robin, a character with no self-worth who thinks her life is meaningless, to care about her life enough, to value her life enough, to cry and beg for it. After all that, losing was not an option. In order to continue their adventure, in order to protect his friends, Luffy summoned every last bit of willpower he had from within and unleashed a devastating flurry of punches and won the battle. But barely. It was an emotional roller coaster, but it was the good kind. Now for the fights themselves, the execution of the actual combat. What I look for is a variety of things, and some are exclusive to the type of story I'm experiencing. I'm not expecting Kamehamehas in a realistic, grounded story. Good and clear artwork and animation is one of the most important things. Paneling, if it's in graphic novel form, I don't need it to be fast, just clear and fluid. I enjoy seeing characters use cool and even sometimes real techniques in battle, or seeing them apply something basic creatively. High-speed battles can be cool, but even slow, realistic battles can be excellent. Now, mindless battles are the worst sometimes, where both characters are just flexing their stuff, trying to overpower the other character with just speed, raw strength, on top of having no good reason to even be fighting. It works sometimes if that's the type of character the combatant is, but typically I need a little bit more substance. Battles that use wits, tactics, and strategies are some of my favorites. Hell, it doesn't even have to be a physical fight. It could be a battle of intellectuals a la L versus Light, Death Note. Sports series can have scuffles, but we're here for the matches, the games, the actual sporting events. I mean, Food Wars. The cook-offs are the action, so oddly enough, a punch or kick doesn't even have to be thrown, depending on the genre of the series. Now, circling back to the meathead scraps with bad booking, I admit to occasionally being a fan of the more simple-minded, super fast, destructive battles. Sometimes they are just too damn hype. The first kind of fight in manga that comes to my mind when I'm thinking of this is Toriko, because that story is all about eating good and throwing hands, but I will not sit here and pretend that Starjun versus Toriko was not incredibly epic. That fight was awesome. Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra have some of my favorite action segments because of bending. The fights incorporate real martial arts with elements, and the fights are like a beautiful dance. It's artistic, it's stylish, it's distinctive, and fluid. It's not super fast paced as, let's say, Dragon Ball, but there's beauty in the battle between benders. The cinematography, the use of paneling and camera angles is also phenomenal, and I feel like that's also extremely vital when creating a fight, especially when it's filmed or animated. Now, not a fan of Ruby these days, but Ruby does have some of the coolest action sequences I've ever seen to date due to the style of animation and advanced creative weaponry. I'm talking relatively fast paced with cool weapons, shotgun gauntlets, a sniper rifle scythe. There's good camera work, it's choreographed well. In the yellow trailer, Yang fights Melanie and some other chick. who both use kicks to combat Yang's primarily fist-oriented fighting style. The use of jukes, feints, footsies made for a really good action sequence. There was also a clash in style, and as they say, styles make fights. I took the Twitter, Twix, X, I don't know what we're calling it anymore, Patreon and YouTube, and asked some people what makes a good fight scene, and I got a variety of answers ranging from good power scaling, unique abilities, music, speed blitzing, artworks, fights with emotions, content of the fights, gore, destruction, and more. However, I'm not going to read the comments in this video like I initially said I would. What I'm going to do is we're going to do a stream talking about the subject matter and touching on what it is you guys said, but there were a lot of good comments. But with that being said, it's time for us to conclude this video with my final thoughts. Ultimately, there are a lot of elements to factor in when we're talking about a fight scene or action sequence. We all look for different things. Some people love guns, some people like magic, some people prefer hand to hand, some people like a combination of all. But if I could describe what makes a fight scene truly elite in my eyes, I would say it's the yin and yang of the build up and follow through. Good promo, good booking, and ultimately the execution and payoff from the hype build up. I think the reason behind the fight and how the fight plays out itself, that perfect blend is what makes a fight scene truly elite. Now, I'm passing the puck to you. What makes a good fight scene in your eyes? What are some of your favorite fight scenes across any medium? I don't care if it's a game, something you watch, something you read. I want to know. Share it with me in the comment section below and let me know what you thought about this style of video. This is kind of the type of content I want to make moving forward. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. And you guys have yourselves a mighty fine day. We've gathered enough evidence here to make a great case. It's just up to them fancy pants lawyers not to screw it up. While it didn't take long as I mentioned, it did take more out of me than I imagined. But the boss seems satisfied, the department seems satisfied, and I've done what I can. Consider case 1, what makes a fight scene truly elite? Solved. Thank you for watching.